Okay, hello again. For me, it's only been 10 minutes. For you, it may have been more. Today, and by today I mean since 10 minutes ago, now we're going to talk about Unity and sort of the basic navigation and organization and stuff like that. Cool. I will admit to you guys, Unity I'm relatively new to. My experience with this stuff tends to be in building from the ground up graphics engines that have never been used before. But I've used a lot of Unity as well. So it'll be a learning experience for all of us. So I'm excited to get into it. Oop, there we go. So let's start off by talking a little bit about how to get a project set up, how to get the Unity editor up, and kind of introduce the navigation of Unity. And I'll try to flip between, I've got, where we at? There we are. We got Unity up here, so you'll be able to see it as well. Great. So, the Unity Hub. So, as I mentioned in the introduction lecture, we're going to be using 2019.1.10f1. Unity has, I think since the last time this class was taught, or at least the last time the materials I had, introduced this thing called the Unity Hub, which is this like new design that even in Visual Studio is using, and a lot of people are using to kind of manage different versions of stuff like this. Hub looks like this. I think this is, yeah, I'm just making sure. Cool. So as you can see currently, you get to watch me do exactly what the lecture is doing. I only have 2018 and 2017. And Hub 2.1.0 is available. To install the update, you need to reset Hub, which I'm not going to do yet. So to install 2019.1.10, you go to Add, and you'll see that it's not in this list for whatever reason. So what I need to do is I need to go here to the official releases website, which will open it up in the wrong place on my computer. And now I'm going to scroll down to 2019.10, and there's no F, because they all have Fs. So you might be asking, why do we even write the F? Well, we do. And so down you click on Unity Hub and open Unity Hub. And there it is now, or it should be there. I don't know, there it goes. Sweet. And now add modules to Unity 2019.1.10f1. You need some space. So these things take up a lot of space on your computer. Just be aware, 4 gigabytes or so. So make sure you have that space available before you do this. And you might want to download the documentation. Yes, install. Cool. So this is going to take over my computer unnecessarily. Great. And now it's going to be downloading it. And let's leave that alone to download 4 gigabytes onto my computer. Cool. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about it. Also, if you already have 2019 whatever installed, like, you can locate it. There's a button right here. Cool. So now we are going to have to wait until this is actually done. Okay, so now we have 2019.1.10f1 downloaded and installed. As you can see, where's my mouse? There it is, here. Great. So to create a new project, it's actually quite easy. You can just go to Projects, and you hit New. So let's create a new project, and call it Snowman Demo. And you might want to put it in a location that you like. So let's create a little folder here, IGME202, and select folder. Great. And let's create a new project. Cool. And that will boot up Unity, which will come up and interrupt us in just a moment. If you don't have Unity Hub, then the interface is a little bit different. However, I really recommend you use Unity Hub. I am not familiar with this other way, but you can do it without. where you can have individual installations of Unity. But I believe that the future development of Unity is going to be mostly using hubs, so I recommend getting kind of familiarized with that. So once Unity is set up, you'll see it's loading here. Great. A new Unity of editor is available. Let's skip the new version. So get used to that. It's going to be happening most of the time. You're going to be constantly recommended to update software from now until you die. So just get used to it. So basically, a scene is kind of like sort of the core concept in Unity, where you have a scene, and that's where a lot of things happen. And so you can switch scenes. It's almost like a page on an app or a web page or whatever. But for like a game, you have a scene, and there are objects in the scene, and so on. And so let's take this empty thing. You can kind of see here, there's a sample scene on the left, and here are all your assets and things, which we'll mess around with this in a bit. And you can go and you can, what? Maybe this is different. In 2019, there is no save as scene, unless you want to do that, which we don't. So let's create a new scene. Great. And let's name it. I'm going to edit this part out for the actual lecture because I haven't used Unity in some time. So what I'm going to do, let's do this. Okay. So in this new version of Unity, we do not have a save scene as in the file. It's actually down here. So we can go down, save scene as, and notice that we're in the assets folder of the demo. And so now we're going to call it snowman scene as, let's just call it snowman. Great. And hopefully this will show up here. There we go. I see. We don't want that. We want our snowmen to be in scenes. I'm not sure why that was even an option, but all right. Anyways, so I'm going to try to edit that, I think. But basically, we can save scenes that way. And now we have a snowman scene with a main camera and a directional light. Oops. Great. So let's navigate a little bit around the editor. So to zoom in and out, you basically scroll, use the scroll wheel. To rotate, you right click and drag your mouse. And that's not going to rotate like around a point. It's almost like a first person rotate. And then to pan side to side, you left click. Apparently not. Does not want to play this game. Right. So this is incorrect. It's not actually a left click. It's a middle click now. And you will pan side to side. But you can also do it with the arrow keys, which I highly recommend. Also, if you hit shift and arrow keys, forward, backwards, left, and right, you go a little bit faster. So another kind of thing to really get around is you can also hit these buttons up here, where, well, not the scale tool, but the, where are you? Oh my god. Right. This was bound to happen in a new version of Unity. It's going to be all different than what I'm used to, but it's all right. So, yeah. I'm doing good here. Left. So yeah, middle click to pan. Right click to rotate. Alternatively, another option is to use this guy here, where you can actually click these to different views. And down here, you can actually rotate it, I believe. Here, right click and free. And now you can rotate around a little bit. Kind of see that there is a sort of grid there. It's kind of hard to tell probably in the stream. That'll give you a bit of a view. We're currently in isometric mode, so you can switch back to perspective mode. If you right click on this, you have all of those options as well. Yeah, so now let's go on. So let's talk a little bit about the windows. So the scene window is this one right here. And you can kind of see everything that's in your scene. You have the hierarchy window, which is this window here, your hierarchy window. You can move these around. So you can see here, this is a different kind of setup, and you can actually do whatever you want. So you can like move this over here, which is actually my personal way I like to do things. And in fact, I like to put the console down as well, so I can actually see what's going on, because I don't actually need that much of a project view. And so this is what I personally like. This is my settings. The project, this is the available access for scene, but really it's just a viewer into your computer stuff. So let's see, there's a better view that we can use than this, but we can also make things smaller and change kind of the settings. As you use these tools more and more, you'll get more kind of accustomed to the settings that you like and what you want and so on. And then finally, the inspector, which will show relevant information about the object that you have selected. So you can either select an object in the scene, you'll see all this stuff here, or you can also select it in the hierarchy. So you can kind of see here, and I can change the direction of the light by changing this value, which will actually change this pretty significantly. If you can kind of see the sky changing in reaction to these numbers. Go back to the default. Cool. Right. So the scene organization. Keep your stuff organized. Every time you make a Unity project, we'll always add the next few folders: scenes, images, materials, scripts, and prefabs. We also rename game objects whenever possible. So, you know, stuff is great for junk projects, but please do use real world names whenever possible. Don't just arbitrarily name things as you see fit, because it'll drive everyone crazy, yourself included. To create a new folder, it's actually quite easy. You go and you open up this, and you can create up here and folder. And now in scenes, which I'm under the scenes, so let me delete that really quickly. Yes. Let's go to the top level hierarchy, as you can see here. And I'm going to create. Another option is you can right click here, create. And I think you can also do Control-Shift and, no, that'll just create a new object, which is not what I want. So let's just do it, create folder, create. And let's call it materials. And let's create all those other ones as well that we were talking about. Create folder, images, and create folder, scripts, and create folder, prefabs. Great. So now I've created all our folders. Now let's change, the naming of things. How do you change it? Let's not do what's shown in this slide, because that's has already created a couple of spheres, which is going to be shown in the next few lectures. But say I want to change the direction of the light's name to something else. I'm going to change it to the sun or black hole sun because you know why. Great. Notice the little asterisk will show up here. So Control S that stuff away. Control S, save your stuff often. Unity, just like any type of editor program, is notoriously hard to predict in terms of when it will reset itself. So please do save your work always and often. Great. So that's how you rename things. Let's add some basic geometry. So just like we created a folder, we can actually right-click here and create different things, as well as up here, or also you can do it here as well. So there's a lot of different places to create. Obviously, they really want you to create things. So let's create first a 3D object that will act as our floor. Now we've got like a nice little plane. We'll change the materials and the colors and all that stuff later. Notice that if I move this light around, nothing happens. That's because it's a directional light. We'll talk a little bit about that. But if I change the direction, the lighting will change. We'll talk more about that later. But for the meantime, let's move this thing out of the way so that it doesn't bug us. Let's rename this like we did before. Ground. And let's add a couple of geometric primitives like a sphere. Let's do that. The sphere. Notice that the sphere is in the ground, which is not cool. So you can move it up, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Let's talk a little bit about how this stuff fits into the scene and how to kind of understand what's going on. So notice nothing's in the inspector right now, but if I click on the plane, you'll see all of this information pops up here in the inspector. I can change the name here. I can change other stuff. I can change its rotation. I can change its position. I can make it bigger. Oops, that's not big enough. Let's make it 10 by 10 or 19. Notice if I make it taller, nothing happens. Why is that? If I make it 0, it disappears. Why is that? Well, a plane is a geometric primitive with no height. So as long you can't really scale it. And that's something that's really important about Unity in this particular view is that you're not changing the geometry, you're changing the scale. So these primitives are all these sort of perfect primitives, so to speak. So they don't have, for example, any kind of geometry. In the case of the sphere, however, you'll notice I can scale it. Now it's an oblong shape. Or I can go down here into the radius and make it a bigger radius. So I can make it 2.0. Oh, that's the collider. Actually, I can't do that. Yeah, I don't think I can actually change the radius of the sphere automatically or programmatically. But you can change the position programmatically. So we know that the sphere is a 1-unit sphere. So if I put it at 0, it's going to be, under the floor, which is not what we want. Let's put it at, if we put up 0.5, that's not where we want it either. We want it at 1. Why is that the case? We don't want it to be right in the middle of things. So perhaps our plane, as you'll notice, is not at 0y. So let's move it down. And now our sphere is floating above the ground, which is not what we want. We want it at 0.5 because that's the radius. Cool. If we change it to a little bigger, say I want it to be 5. So now it's a radius of 5. Then I want it to be at 2.5. And that'll be just touching the ground. We can test that by looking at it isometrically. Great. Whoops. There we go. Notice this is my favorite way to do things. So one other way to view, so you can pan with the middle button. You can right-click and you can look around like a first-person shooter. Another thing you can do is you can highlight an object, and then you hit Alt, and then you'll be rotating about. I'm not sure if I'm rotating about the point that I'm clicking on. So it's a little bit better in that way for me. Another thing you can do is if you click on an object, I'm going to edit this after so I can fix this a bit. But another thing I really want is I want to view or fit the thing that I'm looking at. And so I don't want to scale it. I want to, oh my God. They've changed everything. As usual. Okay. So I don't know where the setting is, but if you hit, say I'm over here, I looked over there, I'm lost, I want to see the sphere, and I hit the key F on my keyboard, it'll bring me to that. And then I can, let's do F again, and I can now hit Alt and then rotate about that sphere, which is a really nice, helpful thing. Cool. So now we've done that a little bit, let's talk a little bit about some of the other things. This is the view of the scene. This is the asset store, which will connect you to the internet, and we'll talk about that later. And this is the game view. And so what is the game view? So what I really like to do actually is I like to take this game view and I like to pop it out into its own view. This may be a little bit annoying, it's too wide, so let's put it here. And now what you'll notice is if I move my camera here, nothing happens to that view, right? However, what happens if I move the camera? And now you'll notice that the camera will move that view. So this is actually what the game would be viewing, and if we were to play it, great, like that's what you would actually see the game being played in that bottom right window, which is nice. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Cool. So how do you position things? We've already kind of played with this a little bit. There's a couple of ways to do it. To position an object, you can move it. These little arrows here let you move it in a particular direction. Y, Z. You can also notice that there's a plane here. So if you highlight one of these planes, it'll let you move it in that particular plane. Right? Cool. Alternatively, we can programmatically move it like with keyboard entry. So now we're at -3x. So I can move it to 1, I can move it 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Let's put it back to -3. And you can do that here. In the same way, you can rotate it. So if I want to rotate it on the Y by 15 degrees, or not, I guess it's a sphere, so it won't let me rotate it. Let me add something that's maybe a little bit more clear that it is being rotated. Cool. So let's do that. So one way is to rotate it by way of here. So I can rotate it by 10. Let me do it on X so you can see a little bit better. So on. Another way to rotate it would be using the rotation orb. So the way you do it is you select the rotation tool and then you click on a particular, let's fit so I can see it better. So now you can see these tools here. I can rotate it like that, rotate it like this, and so on. And I can also scale it. So if you choose the scale tool, you can also do it programmatically like I was doing before. Or you can select one of these and actually kind of scale it in that way. But if I scale into the negative, it still works because an inverse thing is still a thing. So, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Do not do it often, but do it if you have to. Great. So let's go back to our sphere. Great. And so yeah, a lot of different ways to do it. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to do it programmatically as well. So for relationships with empty game objects. So Unity doesn't have a formal definition of having sort of containers or what's called a composition pattern where you have multiple objects within an object, and then they all move related to each other. So the way that you can do that is you can create an empty object. So you go and let's create empty. You notice that it's the most commonly created object. And now if I put, let's say I create, let's take our sphere and drag it and drop it into the game object. And now you'll notice that it's inside of the game object, right? And I can add a component in here. So, oh no, I do not want to do that there, actually, sorry. If I can create a new object here, like adding a sphere, and now I've got another sphere, and you'll be like, where is it? Well, that sphere is inside the other sphere, so I can pop it up, right? And let's create another sphere on top of that. Cool. And now we've got a bunch. Now notice, when I select the game object, if I move this game object, they'll all move together. And so what I need to do, you'll notice that the position of the spheres, it's only y is different. But here, this one has some wackadoodle stuff here. So let's zero that out. And what's important to note is that these objects now are in the frame of reference of each other, if that makes any sense. So, you know, when I move this object by 2x, it's in reference to that object, where the object is positioned at this particular position. But this object is in reference to that. And so you can kind of nest these as far down as you want. And they'll always kind of maintain that relationship, which is particularly useful, especially if, say, you want to rotate them. Right? They're all going to rotate together. And they're going to rotate about the 0 point. And the 0 point is defined as 0 of the top level game object. But that's a whole other subject. Let's undo that, which you can do with Control-Z, or you can do undo. Normal rules apply here. Cool. So we positioned all of our things into 0, and now you can kind of see we've done that. Let's follow along with the rules here, with the lesson here, and let's kind of pretend like this is our snowman. So this is our snowman, and this is going to be the head. This is going to be the middle, and this is going to be the bottom. And it's kind of backwards, isn't it? Right? The bottom is at the top, and the head is at the bottom. So let's change that up, where the bottom should be at 0. Oops. And the middle should be at 1. And the head should be at 2. And let's make this 1. 1 and 1. Great. So now we've got, it kind of looks like a snowman, right? Okay. So now you've got a little bit of exposure to this stuff, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of bumbling about. I'm also kind of learning the difference between 2019.1.10.f.3. I don't know what. And so we'll get through it together. So the homework for the next class, and again, please ignore the Thursday blah blah blah. Everything is going to be due all together on Tuesday next week. I'll update future lectures to reflect that correctly. Finish the pretest. Send it to me or submit it on my courses. Read the articles and the readings that are posted to my courses, and also. So I'm not really sure how to tackle this, but if you do come to office hours online, please bring a Unity file so I can look at it on the live. But please in the next class have Unity open like I was doing, and as you were following along with the video. Hopefully this has been helpful, and this is the end of part 1 of Unity Introduction.